These are cards you should always draft in Aetherdrift. Now, always is a strong word, so let's just say you should always consider them when you see them in packs and definitely prioritize them because they are great. First up is Glory Heath Lynx. This 2-drop does it all. It's got a great stat line, so it's good at attacking and blocking. It's got lifelink, so it can help buffer your life total early or help you make a comeback late. And in the early turns when you're attacking with it, you can saddle it up to get some card advantage by getting planes from your deck. So this card does everything you want from a 2-drop and is absolutely worth prioritizing as a result. Next is Autarch Mammoth, a card that is terrifying for your opponents and can single-handedly take over a game from your side of the battlefield. You play this for 6 mana, you get a 5/5 and a 3/3, which is just an insane amount of stats for 6 mana, and because it's spread across 2 bodies, your opponent can't even take care of it with a single removal spell, which makes it really good at helping you stabilize. Also, if you're able to enable attacks for it with that Saddle 5 enabled, you can then start building up an army of 3/3s, and from that point, it's really, really hard for your opponent to make a comeback. Autarch Mammoth is absolutely stellar. Next is Haunt the Network. This card can end games out of nowhere. If you're able to stall the board state, build up a bunch of artifacts, you can just do tremendous amounts of damage to your opponent and gain tremendous amounts of life for yourself. 5 mana to get only 2 1/1s is not the greatest stat-wise, but in the deck that it fits in, which is this blue-black deck, you are going to be able to take your opponents out of the game or even just swing the game into your favor so that you can start chipping in with those 1/1s you're making to end the game in a hurry. And overall, this is the sort of card that you should be prioritizing because it makes a archetype really, really thrive. Next is Grease Wrench Goblin. This is a 1-drop that is also good in the late game, which can be a lethal combination. On turn 1, you get a 2/1, so it can attack in, do some damage, and even crew your bigger vehicles a little bit. And then in the late game, you get to exhaust it to discard up to 2 cards, then draw that many cards, which is just what you want in the late game when you have a couple extra lands in hand, because all of a sudden your Grease Wrench Goblin is digging you towards more action and becoming a 3/2 in the process. So overall, this little guy does just what you're looking for in your early game plays and is a really lethal card as a result. Next is Ranger's Refueler. This 2-drop gets you so much card advantage if you have some exhaust abilities, while also being totally solid by itself. 2 mana, 3/3, kind of reasonable to crew in the early turns, can really shut down some early aggression from your opponents, but where it really shines is in that text. Whenever you activate an exhaust ability, draw a card. There are a bunch of exhaust abilities you're going to want to play in your decks, and keeping the card draw flowing is going to help you find even more of them. Having an exhaust ability itself that's reasonable to activate and makes it into a 4/4 creature is just gravy on a card that's already solid and pushes it over the top into being absolutely fantastic. Next is Veteran Beast Rider. This card can really make you want to draft a green-white deck. Not only is it overstated as a 3/4, not only does it let you untap your creatures to give them pseudo-vigilance, but also let them crew up your vehicles or saddle up your mounts while being able to attack and block and do all that other stuff as well. Untapping them at your end step is great, but the ability to activate to buff all of your creatures is really going to make it hard for your opponent to block. You can trade up with your creatures, you can make blocks simply infeasible for your opponents, and if you get to the late game where you have 8 mana available, you can double activate this, which makes it almost impossible to block your board state reasonably if you have any number of creatures that's bigger than like 2. It's really just a fantastic card. Next is Spike Shell Harrier, the card that absolutely destroys aggro decks. Once you get to the mid stages of the game, when the board is kind of stable, it gets harder and harder to get that speed count up, and Spike Shell Harrier lowers their speed by 1, which can be a huge barrier in that mid stage of the game. Importantly, though, it's also a 5 mana 4/4 that bounces their biggest threat, which is just really, really great for tempo. Even if you're on the front foot, it's great, but especially when you're behind, lowering their speed, getting rid of their biggest threat, just really devastating to see, and all attached to a 5 mana 4/4 that's going to be able to brawl in combat. At that stage of the game, this card is a superstar. Next is Night Market. This common might look unsuspecting, but one of the reasons it's so great is that it prevents 2 of the biggest variance losses that come up in Magic the Gathering, which is losing to not having the right colors in the early stages of the game and losing to drawing too many lands in the late stages of the game. And Night Market conveniently helps you with both. It comes in tapped, which is a downside, but the fact that it can tap for any color that you choose when it comes into play means that it's not only good in decks that are trying to splash, but it's also just great in your 2-color decks because it lets you keep more hands because you'll be able to cast the spells that you have, and it adds on to that by being great in the late game. When you don't need lands, you can cycle it away to try to find more action. This is a card you should strongly consider out of any pack that doesn't have something premium, and overall is a card that is absolutely worth taking very highly in the draft as a result. Next is Thundering Broodwagon. This is a poster child for value. 6 mana, 6/5 vehicle, relatively easy to crew with crew 3. It even has a couple of abilities with Menace and Reach, and when it comes into play, you can get rid of a non-land permanent with mana value 4 or less. This can take out vehicles, pesky enchantments, and also importantly, creatures. It even has cycling, so in the early stages of the game, you can cycle it away, potentially to set up Reanimator shenanigans to get this card back into play. Overall, it's absolutely fantastic and comes with a great color combination. Green-black is definitely a deck you should be very happy to draft in this format, and getting Thundering Broodwagon is a good reason to do so. Finally, we have Stock Up, which is not your everyday 3-mana draw 2. Getting to look at the top 5 cards of your library and take whichever 2 you want is an absolute game changer for this card. It means that in the early stages of the game, if you really need lands, especially lands of a specific color, you can oftentimes find those way more reliably. And in the late stages of the game, when you don't need lands at all, you're going to get 2 reasonable spells or even 2 premium spells out of the deal. Stock Up is way different than just a 3-mana draw 2. It gives you way more selection, gives you way more control over what you take for the exact situation, and can help you dig you to your really, really good cards like your bomb rares and stuff of that nature. Overall, Stock Up is absolutely fantastic, even though it looks kind of like it might be a little bit slow and not affect the board state and stuff. In this case, it's worth playing it anyway because it really does have a great effect on the game. That's going to do it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. I do hope you enjoyed it. If you did, remember to hit that thumbs up button, subscribe to the channel, and in the comment section down below, leave hashtag 10wins to let me know you made it all the way till the end, because these cards are winners and they'll help you get more wins yourself. That's going to do it for this one, though. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll talk to you next time.